Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Megan, and here we are with Jen again. Hey, Jen.
Hi, excited to be here again today.
Yes, I'm always excited to have Jen on with me. Not to take it away from any of my other co-hosts, but don't tell them you're one of my favorites.
Yes, you have to say that. I'm the only other attorney in your office.
Yeah, this is true. But we're growing. We are growing rapidly. Well, I'm excited about today because, I think for our listeners out there, I think they're following the podcast. They probably follow you and I, and they know that you put out some amazing content on LinkedIn, and you're really getting a lot of traction on it. And it's because it's good, it's authentic, and it's good. And I tell you all the time, I love what you're doing, even though it takes you a lot of time to do. But our guest today is a product of you putting out really good content and someone engaging and loving your content. So great job. Keep it up.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to her today. So Michelle Raue will be on our podcast, and I met her through the LinkedIn post because she always has the most insightful messages in response to whatever I post. And so I was so excited to reach out to her and form a relationship with her, as she's someone who is mentoring young women and men in the field of insurance, is super passionate about insurance, and is hoping to get more people to come into this amazing industry.
Yeah, and I couldn't say it better myself with that. Let's bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Megan Henry.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Now, I will say that I'm so happy that you've come on this podcast, but you came on because you started engaging in Jen puts out a lot of content out there, and she puts out great posts, and you started engaging in her posts, and she's like, I think we really need to talk to this Michelle and have her on. So for any of the listeners out there, if you don't want to be on the show, you don't engage in our posts, because then we're going to reach out to you. But if you want to be on, start engaging.
No, yeah, Jen does put out great content, so
she does. Yeah, see, Jen, all that hard work, it doesn't go unnoticed.
And it's funny, I was just telling Megan the other day that sometimes it's like the ones that I just are kind of like stream of consciousness, like how much I hate running. I get so much engagement. Everyone out there hates running, apparently. So you never know.
Yeah, I think your post today about homework is probably doing really well.
6th grade homework, it's above my pay grade.
Oh. I know that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm totally digressing, but that spoke to me because I legitimately was having the same conversation last night, looking at very similar 6th grade homework, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to logically help you figure this out, because I don't know what any of these terms mean.
My son's doing pre-algebra, and I have to get him to call his sister. I'm like, I can't help you.
That's next for us. I can figure that out.
I've been watching YouTube videos. There's a lot of teachers who will teach a short lesson on YouTube. It's probably geared towards parents like me. So that's what I've been doing lately. But it's funny, you have risen through the ranks of an insurance company. We're practicing attorneys, and here we are talking about how we can't do 6th grade math homework.
And honestly, the 4th grade math homework tricks me even more, because it doesn't make sense. So explain how you use mental math. How do I explain to her how to explain that? You just did?
I would have flunked Common Core math. That's for sure. Yeah.
And I was a math major. This is why it's so hard for me to I don't even understand this. In any event, so Michelle, we're so happy to have you, and like everyone else we have on this show, what the first thing I ask everybody, because everyone's story is so different, is how did you get into claims? I'm sure this was not the path that you had thought you were going to take, and as is the case with most people. So I'm very curious to hear your story and your journey, how you got into this industry.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea what claims people were or what they did. I actually am old enough to have been affected by the first banking crisis. I went out of college to work for a savings and loan, which don't exist anymore. But I was in their management training program, and the federal government came in one day and took them over. And I looked at the girl next to me and I said, what are we going to do now? And her dad was a State Farm agent. And she said, well, let's go down the street and get a job at the claim office. And I was like, okay. I went down and I applied, and I always tell this story because it's funny to me. I walked into an interview and there were 5 middle-aged white men sitting at a table, and they had a little chair on one side for me. And one of them literally had his feet up on the end of the table. And they asked me the questions, and it got to the guy at the end, and he took his feet down and he leaned in and he said, little lady, tell me what you know about a car. And I said, well, I know where to put the gas and I know where to put a key, but I'm sure I can learn anything. And he just started howling, laughing. And that's how it all started. I just went in and they taught me how to do it all.
Now, could you imagine being in an interview these days and someone calling you little lady?
Well, it was impactful back then. I remember it. That was, 34 years ago. And I still remember it to this day because it was a little bit appalling, but
yeah.
He thought he was funny.
In my mind, as you're telling this story too, I picture for some reason like the 5 men sitting around with like cigars.
Yeah. Well, they all had on, short sleeve shirts, the typical what you would have thought of an insurance guy back in that day. Short sleeve shirts, tie. They might, I think you weren't smoking in the office then, but
yeah. I don't know. I remember my first job out of college, my boss would come in from Chicago and she was smoking in the office. She wasn't supposed to be. She had one of those ashtrays that was supposed to like suck all the smoke out of it. It didn't really work. Yeah. Definitely breaking the rules. Definitely fire hazard.
I think fortunately by the time I got there, they had not been doesn't smoke in the office anymore. But yeah. And I went in and I went into auto, and I used to have to go out to like salvage yards and body shops, and all these burly guys would look at me like, who's this little girl that's coming along and wants to do stuff here?
And how did you navigate that experience though? Because that's difficult at that time. You're probably one of a few women in the field, and you're going into places that are a little like rough around the edges. So, how did you handle that?
Yeah, they didn't treat you very well. I really took it upon myself to learn I studied everything, and I couldn't go in there and not know what I was doing. They sent me to estimatics school in Dallas to learn how to write auto estimates and learn all about the car. And I was the valedictorian of my class because I was like one of the very few females. And I'm like, I'm not going to not ace this class, because you just had to work harder if you were a female, because they just would write you off.
Yeah. And so what did you do from there? You start off at your friend's dad's State Farm office.
Yeah, we he was an agent, and this was the claim. This is back when they used to have claim offices in every town, and they did claims a lot differently back then. But I did everything from writing the estimate on the car to handling the injury to dealing with the attorneys to you did soup to nuts back then. It was like, but it was a great way to learn, and you had to go out in the field and meet people in their house. And I even remember when my boss was just this really wise man who had been around a long time, and he'd say, go out there and look around, and are there clothes hanging on a clothesline in the backyard, but they got a dryer on their front porch? They need a dryer. The claim value is the cost of a dryer. And it was a great way to learn. And the fact that people don't have to go out and do those things in person anymore, I think it just takes away so much from the actual claim handling piece of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, you can really get a greater sense of what's going on with especially if it's a homeowner's claim. You have a greater sense of what's going on with the home, but you get to meet the people, and I feel like that interaction is very important, and something that doesn't happen as much anymore now that we have everything is just done online and through apps. While it makes it very convenient, you kind of lose that human element of things. You
absolutely do. And they, if you're in front of them and they like you, and you're presenting yourself, you're empathetic, and you're there to help, it's just much easier to handle a claim when you're live in person. And of course, you still go out for property, and I've stood on slabs. The hurricane's coming right now. It always makes me think back to the first storm I did, which was Hurricane Andrew in 1992. That's how long ago. But you stand there on this slab that used to be their house, and it's gone. Like there's nothing left. And, it's like these people are grieving a death, and the experience of being able to help them through that. I wish it was something that I had known existed when I was in college, because it's a really awesome thing to be able to do, because we literally are the second responders. They send the fire crews in first, and here comes the claim ranks after them to help these people rebuild their lives. It's a big deal.
It's amazing. Almost everyone we've had on the podcast talks about how they got into claims and how happy they are to help people that they're in claims. But insurance companies and insurance adjusters have such a bad rap in society at large.
Yes.
But the underlying theme is that they're there to help people.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Morgan and Morgans tell our story, right? I mean, it's like they want to make everybody believe that they're paying. It's a product people don't want to buy, right? It's like, it's like we're females who go out and have to buy underwear. We don't want to do that, right? You have to buy insurance, but you don't ever see anything physical that you get for it unless you have a loss, right? And then, unfortunately, if it's a bad experience, that's the only thing you have to equate to all this money you've spent. But I think, so many people don't have losses that the bad rap comes from. They think we're taking their money. They don't understand, what a combined ratio is, and that most of the industry doesn't make any money off of their underwriting policies. But most people, when they do have a loss, have a good experience. But when people don't tell the good stories, right? They complain, but they don't stand up there and cheer about their good experiences. But I do think that, I have never met a claims person that did not want to help somebody or pay somebody what they were owed. And we don't get that rap in the press.
Well, and you wouldn't be in this business otherwise,
Right.
because it's not like you get on the phone and you're treated with the warm and fuzzies every time.
Right. No. I mean, everybody we meet they've had a loss. It's their worst day, right? And they're frustrated already, and so we are always kind of in an adversarial situation, and so it's very rewarding to be able to turn that around and help somebody, and at the end, they're really pleased with what happened. And I think that most of the claims people out there, 99.9% of them all want to do the right thing and do it well and do it quick and get people back to where they were before. Yeah.
So I'm going to jump here, but is that what kept you in the business? Because you start in the field, right? And you don't stay in the field. So
No.
So is that the kind of where you're like, okay, I like this. I like what I'm doing. I like helping people. And did that keep you around at the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, I really loved what I did. It's not, you go to work, and I started in college to be an accountant. And I thought, if I have to sit and look at books all day long and, come back tomorrow and that's the same stuff I'm going to do, I think I would have jumped out of a building. But being able to, every claim is different and every situation is different. All the people are different. That, the people that come in and out of your lives when you're in a claims world it's just so unique and so different that once you get into it, it's like I said, I wish I had known more about it in college. And I think that's one thing we got to do is get out there and tell people it exists. But, it's a very rewarding career for somebody that doesn't want to do the same thing every day and wants to see different things and be able to learn what's going on in the world. And I couldn't even imagine doing something else.
And how long did you stay in the field for before you kind of transitioned?
I was probably a field claims person for almost 10 years. And then I just really never much aspired to be in leadership. I thought I would just stay out in the field and handle claims and, have a good life. And hey, we need those people who want to stay in it and be really good at it. And, they do the hardest work. I will always say that the people who are meeting with these customers and handling their claims are the meat of a claims world. But I got kind of tapped to do leadership it wasn't really a choice. Moved into it and then decided, yeah, I like this too. I like being able to, work with people and try to make things better. I'm a huge efficiency person. So how can we make the process better so that these claims professionals have an easier way to get out there and do good?
And also, coming from being in the field, it made you more equipped for that role because you actually understand. It wasn't like you were plucked from the outside, never doing the field work. Like, you understand the processes and what's happening, so you can then have a better idea how to manage, because you actually know what your field adjusters are going through every day. And not so you have other adjusters, of course, too, but you have an understanding of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you've lived it, so you know the frustrations that you had and what can you do to make that better. I do think it's funny when you move into leadership, you think you're going to be able to, because you were good at that and you're going to be able to help people do the job. But then you learn really quickly that leadership's there's a lot more to it, right? There's the human and the people aspect, and you spend a lot more time dealing with personalities and things like that.
And during that time, did you have someone, because I know we plan to talk about some mentorship stuff, but did you have someone then that you looked up to as a mentor that kind of helped guide you through those, and especially at the beginning when you're stepping into a whole new world and something you're not accustomed to? Did you have someone to look up to?
Unfortunately, back then I was the single female that was in the leadership role, and it's you had the guys, but you had to learn how to be part of the guy club. I mean, I had to learn football so I could talk football on Mondays with them. But
Smart.
I know. So I mean, I had mentors who could teach me the technical part of claims and as they got more complicated, but never really a mentor who could tell me what it was like to go drop off my kids at the daycare and then come to work and have to function and all of that. Like it or not, guys and females and males don't think alike, right? We don't have the same mindset. And I just didn't have anybody that I could talk to about any of that.
Yeah. So then, you're going through it, then you must be thinking, or at least I would be thinking okay, now you know what role you need to play for those rising up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always, been really big into that, being that mentor person for the next group or the people I lead, or it's really important to be there and to be able to help, because it's like I said, it's not just you're taking your technical skill up a level and working on technical things all the time. The very first thing that happened to me when I was a supervisor was the team came to me and told me I had to go tell this young man on the team that he had BO. And I was I said, wait a minute, that's not what I signed up for. But you learn very quickly that it's more about the humans as you grow in your leadership than it is about the technical skills. And so, you have to learn how to navigate all of that. And I think that's kind of where we fall short, where we don't equip leaders for those kind of conversations.
And do you remember how you approached him?
I am one of those people who, if I would want to know, then I'm just going to go and tell you. I mean, I just went straight to him and said, look, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I would want to know this. So I'm going to tell you because this is what is being said. He was so thankful. He was a larger gentleman, and he just said, I have a hard time getting to all of it. I felt so bad for him, but he was very, it was very sweet. He was very appreciative, I think. And I learned then that it's, don't shy away from those things. If it's something you would want to know yourself, then just go tell them.
Yeah. He probably thought when you first were coming that he was getting fired. It's like, all right, it's just that I think I can take care of that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. He was a nice man.
So you mentioned that you really didn't have a mentor to talk to you about, like dropping your kids off at daycare and how you navigate that. So, I mean, at what point in your career did you start having kids, and how difficult was that to navigate in such a male-dominated field?
Mhm.
Yeah. I have two big girls, and now I have a 13-year-old boy, but my girls came when I was out in the field, handling claims and navigating all that. And and most of my friends who got out of college with me and started working and started having babies, they all stayed home. And I was pretty much the only one that was working. And so I couldn't even talk to them. So, but it was like, it's y'all do it. It's hard. You got to get up and get everybody ready and get them out the door and get them to the school or the daycare, and then get there before it closes and get them home and bathed and fed and start all over again tomorrow. It was, to be honest, there were 22 months apart. And so it was a whirlwind of, I looked up and thought, where did that time go? I don't remember most of it. It was hard. And I really wish, and that's what I say now, I think it's important. I'm trying to figure out how we can keep some of these ladies in the industry without them feeling like they have to leave and go raise their children and come back. But we don't offer enough of that support and that mentorship. And I think if I had somebody to talk to, I mean, my mom was always there, but she didn't work when we were little kids, so she didn't quite know what to say. So I think it's something we can do much better at.
And did you find at that time too that these women who were your friends, did it suddenly become a little harder to relate because your life was so different from theirs at that time? Not that you can't have common interests and still be friendly, but it's just like you're in just totally different places.
Yeah. And I remember showing up for you'd sign up to be on some committee at school, and they'd have the meetings after drop off at 9 a.m, and you're supposed to be at work, and so you have to stay, and they'd all look at you like you had a third eye because you're the one mom that works, and they get to spend all the time. I can remember saying, can we hurry this meeting up? I've got to get to work, because they are having coffee and having fun with their friends. But I mean, my friends who I graduated from college with, it was easier because I've known them forever and I could talk to them. But the peers of my daughters, their mothers, I never, I didn't get invited to the stuff they did. And they always looked at me like, we don't have anything in common with you.
And at that time, other than having kids the same age, your lives were just very different.
Yes.
Like it's, you're packing in all the things that they like. You have to pack in the grocery shopping and this and that and the errands on the weekends or after work, whereas they can do it on like a Tuesday morning. Like it's just it's very different. And the juggle.
And like I said, I have a 13-year-old now, and fortunately my husband now stays at home, and he does all of the stuff. But two things, the mothers won't include him in the things because he's a dad, and that would be weird. And they still send me all this stuff. Like I'm on a text chain with this whole group of moms, and I never respond. And I'll be in a meeting and that text chain will just start going off. And my husband says, well, why don't you just, exit the text chain? I said, I can't, because they will all see, Michelle Raue left this text chain. I don't want them to think that I'm not, don't care, I'm not paying attention, even though I never respond.
They're going to think they said something that offended you or something.
I know.
And then it's going to be a whole other thing.
I know some of it is just too much. So it's hard. It's like, and there's things that they won't go to him for. And I'll have to say, you need to ask my husband. He handles all that. It's just really a strange dynamic.
At least I think it does probably make it a little bit easier that you have a 13-year-old son, though. I think if you had a 13-year-old daughter, I think it would be like, at least he has the male
Right.
stuff, like in the
Yeah, I mean, he takes him to football practice and all
Yeah.
those things, and that works. And he can talk to the dads and do stuff like that. But with the girls, it was much harder.
Yeah, you're not on a text chain talking about who got their period yet. Like it's,
Yes,
yes. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Well, and I do see, I think I was telling you last time we spoke, so I am unfortunately the PTA president for my kids' elementary school. And our board is 6 members, and we are all full-time working moms, which is a huge dynamic shift
Yeah.
from what it used to be. But I think some people in the PTA at large think that we're stay-at-home moms, and they can contact us at 10 a.m. like, I have this problem, can you fix it immediately?
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen. But the other thing is we have been seeing a lot more dad participation. Like we have homeroom parents. This year we have 3 dads out of 45, which, it's not a huge number, but that's great. I mean, 3-4 years ago, we had 0 dads.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I do think that I do see a pendulum swinging. A lot of the families at our school have dual working parents. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to see some of these households with a 50-50 split. Or we do have, a stay-at-home dad. He was a PA and his wife is a surgeon. And he said, nope, you're the surgeon. I'm the PA. I'll stay home with the kids. And so kudos to him, and your husband as well to fill that gap and fill that need if that's the way that your family dynamics work. Yeah. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. I think now it's better than it was when my girls were little. Mm-hmm. But I think it can still get better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
But how did the initial discussion with your husband go? Was it something that he had brought up, or did you guys or were you just mutually talk about it?
Well, it worked out. Our son is adopted and he came later in life. Right. And so we owned a business. We were already thinking about selling. And my husband's just a little bit older than me. So it was it worked out that he could do that. We actually moved 4 times in 8 years. So he, sold the business because we were going to do that anyway. And we just jumped around with me, and he retired. We'll just call it, he retired early.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it worked for us because we weren't, we're no longer young spring chickens. We're older at this go round. And so
you're talking about moving multiple times. Was that for your job or?
Yes.
So I guess we'll kind of come back. You're 10 years as a field adjuster. Now you come back into the leadership position. And so how many moves and changes and have you had kind of throughout the course of your career?
Yeah. After I did the stint in the field and learned all of my claims from a practical standpoint, went into leadership in a small regional carrier, and was there about 10 years, ended up running their claim organization. And it was not a great time. And it was, kind of right around the banking crisis. Mm-hmm. And the financials weren't good, and we were going to lay off a bunch of people. And I kind of say I went down with the ship. I put my name on the layoff list, and I actually went to work for my husband in his company, and learned really quickly, you don't want, when you own a small business and that's all your eggs are in that basket and it's with your spouse, it's probably not the best idea. So decided to get back into claims, this was all in Alabama, as you can tell from my accent. And then we moved to Austin, Texas, where I took a kind of higher level leadership role in a super regional company. Ran the Western region out there, then moved from there to Columbus, Ohio, which was the home office, and ended up being the vice president of personal lines claims. Then I took a giant leap of faith out of the traditional insurance industry and went to work for Lyft, mm-hmm. the rideshare company, and set up their claim organization.
Yeah, and I want to pause there because what you did for Lyft, when we were talking about this on the phone, you pretty much built the claims department. Tell us a little bit how you approached that, because it was a giant undertaking on your part.
Yeah, so they came. I wasn't looking for a job. They came looking, and this was right over after, if you remember, when Uber did their crazy stuff, and there was this big delete Uber movement, and everybody went from Lyft or from Uber to Lyft, and they scaled, tremendously. And never in a million years did the founders of Lyft think that when they made this rideshare app, they would end up being the 6th largest commercial auto insurer in the country. Yeah. And with that came all the, state legislatures passing all the transportation network statutes and requiring all these huge limits. And so, what do we do? And so they technically weren't self-insured. They bought a captive and wrote a policy with, at the time, Zurich, and reinsured it. At the time, they first started off with 95%, and then they went to 100%. So it was all their money. And so they're sitting there with all these claims, which are turning into nightmares because it's the most non-standard of non-standard insurance with $1 million limits. And, as attorneys, y'all can see what problem that would have. And so the claims just kept piling up and not going away. And they had given the claims to a third-party administrator who wasn't really skilled in handling this kind of claim dynamic. And they were about to go public. And what are we going to do with all these mounted claims? And so they went out looking for a claim leader to come in and say, what can we do? So started basically with, they had a handful of claims people there that were kind of overseeing the TPA, but most of the people were on the risk side, and, they understood how to place insurance, but not how to handle it. So when I came in, it was like, we had to decide what was Lyft's DNA going to be. Like, do you want to be a claims organization? Do you want to be an insurance company? And, the answer was quickly, no, that's not quite in our DNA. So I call it a 3-pronged stool. What we finally decided to do was they wanted to own the relationship with their drivers. So we stood up a first notice of loss group that could take the losses, because the losses were getting lost in their call trees and things like that.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it was, they're trying to run the claims through the same thing they're running complaint calls through, and it didn't quite work. So we said, okay, let's take the new losses out, set up a group of people who will handle those, first contact with the insureds, set up some technology behind that to get them to the right place quickly. And then we had to figure out what to do with the claims, because these are different. They're not the same kind of claims anybody in the industry was used to handling. And so at the time, we decided to go to the carriers. Everybody was interested in what was going on behind the curtain at Lyft. They wanted to, hey, what's this new ride share? What's going on back there? They wanted a piece of the data. And so the lady who was my boss was over all of risk, and she and I said, let's go out to the carriers and say, would y'all like to handle these claims? Shockingly, everybody came to the table. Really? Every big carrier in the country was interested. And so we started having meetings and discussing it. And the more they'd find out, some of them would drop out. But we ended up with, at the end, it was Travelers who took the claims, and we didn't have a lot of time. We had a mound of claims that had to go, we couldn't keep sending them to this TPA. And we had 59 days from the time we signed the contract with Travelers to the date we turned the hose at them and shot them all 50 states worth of claims. Wow. So it was a massive undertaking. It took Travelers invested a lot and put a huge team on it, and we'll give them all the credit in the world for what they did. And so we sent the claims over there, and then we stood up a group inside of Lyft to manage the data so we can use the data for the loss trends and figure out what was going to come down the road. And we set up an oversight group of claim advocates who would, have much more involvement in the actual claim adjudication and the audits and all of that. And so we went from having, just a tiny handful of people in the claim world at Lyft to when I left, there was 83 people handling the claims. And so it was a big piece. It hasn't been completely solved yet. That's a really, really hard space. It's a lot of uninsured interests in the gig economy, which somebody's going to have to tackle at some point. But it was a fun ride. Very different from being in the insurance world.
And so did a recruiter reach out to you, or how did you?
Yeah, it was a Lyft recruiter. I had been at State Auto, which is a super regional in the middle of the country. And we were doing some really cool things in the claim world. We had stood up the first telematics initiated claims process. We were, kind of cutting edge on all the technology at the time. And they started asking around, and people were like, you need to go poach somebody from State Auto because they're doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I just can't imagine getting that phone call and be like, hey, so.
Well, recruiters hit you up all the time, and I always would hit delete because I truly loved my job. I loved what we were doing at State Auto. Loved the company, loved all of being able to have backing to do all of the neat stuff that was coming out. But when that Lyft email came, I was like, that one's hard to delete. And I started talking to him, and I actually went to my CEO at State Auto, and I said, what would you do? And he said, I would take the job. I know you, and you should take the job.
Well, and that's always nice though to hear the two, because you probably were thinking look, I'm taking this leap of faith, because it is a leap right now, because Lyft is pretty new at that point. You don't know, you could take this job and be unemployed in 2 months, and at least you get the blessing from your CEO. You felt like you had a landing. If things blew up in your face, you wouldn't necessarily be going back with your tail between your legs, be like, okay, I took that leap of faith and I missed. I didn't make the jump.
Well, and at the time I took the job, I had no idea that COVID was looming a couple of years down the road. But we had time to get everything set up in that world, and it was working pretty well. That when COVID did hit, and they had to make some choices about saving salary money, it just made sense that I could go and my team could stay. And so
that was what I was going to ask for. Were you a COVID casualty of Lyft?
And I totally get it. We lost 95% of our rider share overnight. It was you have to do something, right?
No one was on the road. There was this
scary times. Yeah.
And so then how did you then land at Preferred Mutual?
So it's funny, the day after, the Lyft layoffs were announced, I got a call from a recruiter that I'd known for years. And she said, Michelle, I have the perfect job for you. And I'm like, really? And so she introduced me to Preferred Mutual, and it just, this was a company that really needed to bring in somebody who could bring their claim organization up to the 21st century. And I want to be somewhere where I feel like I really make a difference. And that's what it felt like. It felt like, you can come in and they will listen, and you have the opportunity to create something really good. It's a much smaller organization than I've ever been in, but it's, I found out that I really like that better, because you don't have to go through a bunch of, jump through a bunch of hoops to get anything done. It's, you can make a difference. I inherited a really awesome young leadership team who just needed some direction. And so they are all, I've been able to groom and show them how to look at data to run your organization. And they've really leaned in and been really, really great. And my goal is to, when I leave, one of them can take my place. And I don't think that was an opportunity they ever had before. So it's been really, really good.
Yeah, and it's almost like now you've come not full circle, but now you're truly in a position too that before, like when you're starting at State Farm, you're the only, woman in the room, and now the climate has changed so much in this industry, and now you can really be that mentor that you were never had the opportunity to really have yourself.
Yes. And I try to lean into that all the time. Like as many people that want me to talk to them about anything, I probably volunteer too much, but it's well worth it.
Jen knows how that feels.
Yeah.
She volunteers too much.
I do. But it's usually worth it, right?
Yeah. But learning how to say no is a really good quality. I mean, I do know when to, pull back a little bit.
Well, maybe you could teach me because I'm still learning.
I'll mentor you on that, Jen.
She's on like strict orders not to volunteer her time for her husband.
Yeah. Miss President of the PTA.
Yeah,
that was a poor choice. Poor choice, but here I am.
But you learned from it, right?
I learned a little bit more how to say no. But no, I mean, I come from a family of teachers. My mom's a professor in education, and my 3 sisters are teachers. And so I also feel like not only is it a way to give back to my kids and to be part of their school, but it's also my giving back to the teachers too, to make sure that they get what they need from the school and from the parents. But I still need to learn how to say no.
Yes. Well, from those of us who never had any interest in doing that, thank you. I thank you for stepping up so that they never have to volunteer me into it.
It is. That's a whole other story for a whole other podcast, is my PTA.
But one thing, you had touched on at the beginning of this podcast, and I think we had talked about on the phone though too, is that, there's a real need to get more word out there about this industry. And I do think there is a lot being done to get people into the industry, but it's still not enough. I mean, so, how do you think we can get more interest that to get the younger generation into claims and into insurance, because the career potential is so large and the advancement opportunities are so vast. But it's just not like I don't think it's like flashy or sexy enough that people are like, they're like, I'd rather go in investment banking, and not that someone in investment, they're different fields, but like how do we do that?
I think it's going to take everybody coming together. I mean, the problem is there are so many small carriers out there that don't have the resources to do things themselves, right? I mean, you've got the big ones, but there's many more of us who are small and just really, resource strapped. But on the flip side of that, most of the small carriers are really embedded in their communities, right? So my office is in the middle of New York State, and we do community activities all the time. I mean, all the street signs in our town have the Preferred Mutual check mark on them. So they know who we are, and that's a great visibility, right? Because they know that here's this employer in that town. But aside from that and being there with your community, we need to really, I'm on the Women in Insurance's Catalyst Committee, that they've developed a playbook to go out and say, go to the high schools and put on these sessions for kids coming out of high school, tell them about the career, or go to colleges and say, have you thought about insurance? At least now we're seeing some insurance degrees in the colleges, slowly but surely. I mean, I think they offered one insurance class when I'm a finance major, so we should have had more, right? I think there was one. But it's just, we have to get out there and tell our story better, because even my daughter, who was raised with a mom who worked in insurance and provided a pretty good life for her, she's a math nut. And when she was leaving high school to go to college, she was like, what can I be? And I said, you could be an actuary. That's
Yeah.
a fantastic career. I don't want to work in insurance, Mom. That's boring. So we've done a really bad job at telling our story, and we need to get out there and just, the sheer fact that there are so many opportunity in different fields within the insurance industry. It's amazing, and nobody has any idea. And I just think that the whole negativity has bled down into that group of potential future employees, right? The same ads they see for Morgan & Morgan telling them we're bad at handling claims, that's what they hear. And until we change that narrative, they're not going to want to come into the industry. So it's going to take, I think it's going to take all of us getting together, maybe some large organizations like PLRB or CLM or NAMIC, the mutual carriers, getting together and having a real concerted effort to change the narrative, to say, look, we are good. We do good for this world. The world could not turn if insurance did not exist. Nobody understands that. We need to get that message out there more.
Well, and even within the legal industry, I mean, I am in some Facebook groups for lawyers, and a lot of times lawyers, and the one is a lawyer mom group, will say, I'm burnt out. I don't want to bill hours anymore. I can't work 70 hours a week. Does anyone know a job I could do 40 hours a week? And I'm like, yeah, handle claims. I said, what does that mean? Somebody they always said, well, what I don't understand. I've never heard of it. And, I told her about it, and she's like, and you can make what kind of money? And you can work 40 hours a week and
from home.
And from home, flexible. It's just, it blows my mind that more people don't want to do it. I mean, says the person who jumped from claims back to practicing law.
It's great opportunities. Pay is good, and half the industry is about to retire. So it's pretty scary times. We've got to get out there, and I mean, doing it on an individual level seems daunting. I just don't know that we can make much of a dent in it unless we really all come together.
And I do think there's like a common misconception though. When you hear like someone works in insurance, at least this is what I used to think before I was on this end that defending insurance companies or insureds. You think of someone going like selling insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I remember even when I graduated law school and I got my first job, and it's obviously an insurance defense firm, and I was like, oh, because I only thought of like, oh, I just knew so and so from high school. Her dad, was an insurance salesman. They had a very nice house, but the whole claims part of it wasn't even part of I didn't even know what it was. At that point, I had no concept of it.
Nobody does. I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine's son who's in college, and I was telling him about, SIU, special investigation. And he's like, what? You can investigate fraud in insurance? And that he just lit up. And I'm like, yeah, let me, work on helping you get an internship this summer. And he's like, he was excited. And I thought, they don't hear it from anybody. They're never going to know.
It's even crazy. My goddaughter is in college and she's a math major. And I was talking to her last year, and I think this spring. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She's like, well, I don't know. What can I do with a math major? And I said, well, why don't you be an actuary? And I told her all about it. And she got an internship this summer as an actuary. And I said, how do the math professors at college not tell you to be an actuary? Like, quite frankly, what else do you do with a math degree? Oh, they go to law school, Megan.
Well, it's probably because none of the, most of the professors are probably economists. I don't know, but they're not actuaries. And so
I'm going to tell you what you do because I looked into it. I remember when I was in college, my plan was to go to medical school, which was my plan. And I was unsure if that's what I really want to do. I was on that path. I had the MCATs, and I was like, but do I really want to do this? And I was like, well, what else could I do? And I was like, I was going to get a psych degree and a math degree. And I remember like, oh, maybe I'll just get a PhD in math. And I looked, because I was like, I don't know what else to do. And I looked into getting a PhD in math, and I was like, well, that seems really hard. And then what do you do with that when you're done. No one mentioned being an actuary. That was not even like, I don't even know if I knew what it was. Nobody, it was not, it was, there was very little guidance, at least
Yeah.
at that point, what you should do. So then I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go to med school really. So I ended up going to get a PhD in neuroscience, and that ended up being a bad choice too. But like I didn't know what to do, so I was like, oh, let's just go do this.
Yeah, and it just, like I said, we've got to get out there more and just talk to people. But like I said, doing it one person at a time seems daunting. So, I mean, there's some organizations who are putting, like the Women Insurance Group, and that's run by the STEM group. So, they are steering more girls towards being actuaries but and we're trying to figure out how we combine efforts. So I'm a member of Rise Professionals, which is the Young Insurance Star Executives, and it gives them a place to network. But we've also now got a group that are the college cohort and getting into that. And so we're going to put the two of those organizations together and see what we can do to help, grow. And so, it just takes all of us talking to each other and figuring out how to put them all together.
Yeah. And I just think like educating people as to the life that you could have and the flexibility, and it's not to say claims aren't stressful. And there's a whole other issue with it too, with, burnout, adjuster burnout, and having so much in your queue. And like, there's a lot. I mean, I don't want to glaze over that. It's not the easy job.
No,
We're not saying it's an easy job. But it is such a great career that there's not really a ceiling top. Like you can keep
do it.
Up. Yeah.
And you're right. It's not an easy career. Like half of the people who enter claims leave. It's just, it takes a different kind of person. I say it's like the person that has the most grit does the best. And I've also had conversations. There's this big feeling that we have to hire people who have college degrees. And I don't always believe that. I mean, I've hired a couple bartenders that have been the best claim reps in the world. Like they just have that meter that kind of can work in the claims world. And so overcoming some of those, qualifications that we throw out there just because it sounds good, sometimes might be a good answer.
Well, and in reality, you don't need a college degree to sit for any of the insurance exams, right?
Nope.
So,
Do not.
If that is what you need to do your job or have certifications to do certain things, like it probably doesn't really matter if you have a degree from whatever college or university.
Yeah. I don't, people used to say all the time that it showed that somebody had the capacity to do that, right? It's stressful to go to college and get the degree. And so they can, you can say that they kind of proven themselves, but you get somebody that's been working in something else for a while and they were good at it. They kind of prove the same thing, right?
Especially a bartender. I mean, we always talk about how in our firm, most of the managing partners had other jobs other than being, before they were lawyers, that were jobs that make them good at what they do now. Like one was a car salesman.
Yeah.
One was a door-to-door knife salesperson. I mean, they had these jobs where, you had to sell yourself, you had to, and like those are the skills that make a good attorney that people don't realize are the skills that make a good attorney.
Yeah.
Waiting tables makes you a great attorney because you have to remember a lot of things from a lot of different places.
That's why a bartender would be a perfect claim examiner.
Yes, they are. I told you, I've hired a few. They make great claims people. And a lot of times when you give people an opportunity for a position that they know really most people have a college degree, they'll work twice as hard because they're getting an opportunity that they know probably shouldn't have been available for them.
Well, and we do an internal training for our new hires. And the one that we do is I do it with another one of the attorneys who has 35 years of claims experience. And we teach them about the claims industry, just so they're aware. And the one thing that I always stress to them is know who you're talking to, because you may have a law degree and they might not, but trust me, They're probably smarter than you, and they probably know more about this area of law than you do, because you have 40 cases and they have 120. Do you know? So you can never underestimate the knowledge and the strength and the skill set of a claims person.
I would always tell people I don't have a law degree, but I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV.
On TV.
Because yeah, I mean, you do. You know, I feel like I could have gone and taken the bar and probably passed it if I, you know,
Probably.
they won't give you anything if you do. You have to go get that JD or that.
Isn't
piece
there
of paper.
some states? Isn't there like, I don't know? Isn't Montana? Can you take the bar without go to law school in Montana?
I'll move to Montana.
Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe you can maybe you can practice without taking the bar. Maybe I got it reversed. But I mean, and even like maybe, you know, a lot of people are changing their outlook on college and how necessary college is too, just I think because of the rising expense of college, and like, you know, does a bachelor's degree really get you anywhere? You know, maybe and maybe there has to be a focus in like almost treating claims as a trade, as something that, you know, you can start doing early on. And sure, yes, you can go to college and still go into claims and do all that, but like there could be an alternative path there that you can, you know, learn the trade and, you know, work yourself through it.
I think definitely that's a path that we should look at. I mean, it hurts my heart to see kids get out of college now with the debt they're in. It's like,
and with literally no job prospects.
They didn't know what they wanted to be. And then, you know, here I am with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt. And how am I going to pay that back? It's just
in a poetry degree. I mean, it's all about doing what you love, though, right?
Well, that's why you have to do claims, right? And then you're done at 4:00, and you can spend from 4 to 10 doing what you enjoy. And then I go to bed, unlike Megan, who goes to bed at 1:00 in the morning.
Oh no, I'm an early night person.
Yeah, she makes fun. She makes fun of me. I'm a lot of fun. That I am, even on weekends, I'm in bed by 10 p.m.
I'm with you.
I'm not. I'm late. Jen is like, what do you do at night? I was like, enjoy the quiet. My best part of the night is when I know everyone is asleep. They're all in their beds. And I'm like, okay, now I can relax.
I know people like that. I'd rather get up in the morning and do the quiet. But
yeah, I know. The mornings it's harder for me. And if in an ideal world, I would do that as well. But I do need to sleep at some point. But I think in the morning for me, I'm always thinking about what's to come in the day. And so I can't relax. Whereas the end of the night, I'm like, well, it's the end of the night. This is my time just to let it go. And then I can stress about everything tomorrow morning.
I can see that.
No,
but I'll fall asleep. I can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are just about out of time, but Michelle, I want to ask you this because I ask everybody this who comes on this podcast, you know, and we've talked a lot about it, but like, you know, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I probably would tell myself not to take things so seriously. It took me a long time to realize that, you know, most people don't care as much about things as you do. And so quit over stressing over things that really don't matter. Yeah, I used to do that a lot, and now I don't. It's wonderful to be my age now because I feel so wise.
I need to take that advice because I definitely stress about all the things that don't matter. And then later look back, I'm like, why was I so worried about that?
Yeah, well, you'll look back sometime in your life and go, I don't even know why I wasted time on all that stuff. It's just not worth it. You know, just let it go.
I think that's good advice. And honestly spoken, as truly as someone who's been in claims. Don't sweat the small stuff.
It'll kill you.
It will. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. It was truly a pleasure having you on. And of course, for our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform as well as YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Megan Henry.